That's it? That's the enthusiasm I get? No, I don't need claps. I just need a louder, like, good morning, right? I was looking at the schedule and it says that this is kind of meant to be inspirational. The keynote says inspirational. Are you ready to be inspired? Yes. Okay, I got bad news for you. This is really the wrong talk to be inspired. So yeah, don't start the booing just yet. But I think that it's a message that I talk about quite a bit, and I think it's important, so I'm given the opportunity to share it, so I'll try and share it with you. And hopefully you will find some inspiration in it. Especially since, we're at Codemotion, which is about coding the future together. So welcome to the machine. This is about the only nice, inspiring slide that is with a, bright background. Really, it's all dark from here. How many of you are familiar with this track from Pink Floyd? Right? It was in 1975, and it was actually, if you didn't know, if you listened to it and you're a big Pink Floyd fan, neither David Gilmour nor Roger Waters were doing the vocals on that one. But it was talking about a bunch of things in their industry. And the question is, how is that related to what I'm talking about? I don't know, because we don't even know what I'm talking about. But anyway, let's start with something we don't know what we're talking about. Amusing Ourselves to Death. That was also actually a track by Roger Waters after he left Pink Floyd. But it was also a book by Neil Postman. Anyone read that? Okay, a few people. So in it was written, it was written in 1985. And he was talking about the telegram radio and later on the TV. And in that, before we used to live in small villages and different people were really disconnected from each other. And then we started to introduce this concept of the telegram. And then we started to have these kind of things as news and so on and so forth. And you started to end up finding out about things that really weren't that much relevant to you, and yet they would be broadcasted day in and day out, either in telegram, radio, TV, and so on and so forth. And you started to live in a world where things that were relevant started to become irrelevant. I find out in the news that a kangaroo escaped headlines, a kangaroo escaped the zoo in Sydney. How that affects my life is, I don't know, but it's there in the news as headlines. And we started to move into this direction, and of course, information started to need to be entertaining because there was so much of it and more people were coming on board, and it just needed to be more and more entertaining. And then the TV appeared, and TV required even more entertainment. It wasn't just about now saying something on the radio. You needed to have a presence, you needed to have a way you look, and you needed to have a posture and be even more entertaining. Now that was the TV. And in it, in this book, what Neil says is that, television was altering the meaning of being informed in that it was basically creating so much information, but it was really creating what's called disinformation. And disinformation doesn't mean false information, but it means misleading information, information that is misplaced or irrelevant, and it would lead to the illusion that we were very well informed. So we got so much information, which was actually disinformation, but it gave us a sense of, oh, I know about everything because I heard it today in the news. Now, some time ago, there was also a book that was written which was called The Brave New World. Anyone read this? Great. And this was written in 1931, and in it was talking about a controlled population with artificial intelligence and artificial procreation in 1931. Think about that. Psychological manipulation in 1931, and continuous usages of substances for entertainment, etc. Okay, that could be alcohol, drugs, or whatever. So Neil Postman's point was that George Orwell, that obviously wrote the book 1984, was talking about a society that was basically going to have censorship, it was going to prohibit us from reading books, etc. And his fear was, it wasn't that society was going to develop, but a society more like Aldous Huxley described. Some that we're just entertained with superfluous nonsense, take drugs for entertainment, artificial procreation, and this was kind of the way that we were going. And he says, in short, Orwell feared that what we hate will ruin us. Huxley feared that what we love will ruin us. Unfortunately for him, they were both kind of right. So this book, he said, is about the possibility that Huxley, not Orwell, was right. Now, of course, this was the TV. And then recently we had this thing. Anybody knows what this is? Yes, it's the internet with Comic Sans. This was back in the old days. I used one of these at some point in my life, and you would put the phone, that's a phone, by the way, and you would put the phone on this other thing, which was called a modem, and then it would make sounds, and you would connect to the internet. And when the internet came more information. And we started to have loads of news. We had like everything. Everyone was a publisher. There was loads of online news agencies. You know, the paper started to give way to websites. And of course, media saw a big opportunity here, right? They're like, okay, we can talk about things, but at the same time, we can try and do something called, you know, advertising, right? And you could see the advertising here in the corner, right? By the way, all of my advertising is in Spain because I live in Spain. It's all in Spanish, which is really funny because when I come to Germany, it's all in German. But anyway, they haven't figured that one out. So this was okay. Like we had an ad in the paper and we had an ad here. They called it revenue. We called it annoying banners. In fact, it's so bad that, and please, you know, allow me to criticize Spain because I've lived there for nearly 40 years, and I am Spanish, and I pay enough taxes to be able to criticize the country. But in Spain, we have a good tendency of taking a bad idea and implementing it really badly to the extreme, right? So this is my local newspaper. So now the news is actually lost in the banners. Now, obviously, I don't look at it like this. This one's even nicer because as you scroll, the banners scroll with you. So you actually don't get to see the news. As I said, we do it well. So what did we do? We installed ad blockers. What did the media do? They said, oh, I'm detecting that you've installed an ad blocker. What did we do? We said, screw you, I'm going to hack it to try and get rid of it. Now, some people did this like advertising right plain inside. Other people did this thing called native advertising. Who's familiar with that? So native advertising has actually been around for a very, very long time. And if you go to a newspaper, this is, for instance, The Guardian, and you can see there's some native advertising there. You can see it over here, right? This is native advertising. And the idea behind native advertising is essentially to create content that is paid but blends into the site. So for instance, you know, how much do you know about vegan food? Now that feels like an info article where I can read about vegan food, and which is fine. And imagine if that article is saying that, you know, vegan food is actually really, really bad for you. And there's scientific, you know, studies that show that this is bad. And then you figure out that that's sponsored by a company called Meats R Us, right? Now, people start to actually take this for facts, and they start to read these advertising and understand it for facts. Now, if you kind of pay attention to this, you see that it says at the bottom over there, you know, paid for by. But a lot of people don't pay attention to this, especially those that are not tech savvy. So some interpret this as news and facts without it actually being the case. And of course, with this comes targeted advertising, which allows to track people. It's often called personal experience. A more honest way to put it is personal manipulation, right? Because that's essentially what it is doing. In fact, like, you know, if you look at the banners on a website, the main difference between a banner on a website and a banner on a billboard as you're driving down to the airport is that the banner on the website is catered to you, whereas the banner on the billboard is catered to everyone. And generally, 50% of the people that you advertise to aren't your target audience. But with the internet, we've made sure that everybody that your advertising reaches is your target audience. But don't worry about that, because there's also ways to solve the billboard banners as well. In fact, just recently I came across this video which was showing how you can actually take a small video and insert advertising in that video as it's moving. So for example, here you see the video, the original one, and here they've inserted advertising. And I'm like, this is so bad. Like, where are we going? And then I found out that there's actually a company in the UK that's been doing it for a long time. So now the videos that you see can have native advertising inserted in them. But fortunately for us, this isn't really a big issue because we have GDPR, right? And GDPR has given us a lot of pop-ups. If nothing, it's given us pop-ups. And fines, which we never know where they go. Or fines, that fine a company $5 billion, which it can make in 2 weeks. And then we have nice little banners that say, we really care about your privacy, but please accept us tracking you while you read an article about how privacy is important. There are some companies that don't even really understand GDPR, and they're like, oh, you're from Europe, screw you. But all of this is because information is essentially yearning our attention, right? They're all competing for our attention and hopefully, essentially waiting for us to click on those ads. And now, of course, we're moving to a paid model. We're no longer in the freemium model, where it's like, okay, I will be bombarded with thousands of ads, but let me read the news or the information. Now, when you go to websites, there's different ways for them to ask for money. Like The Guardian says, oh, please support The Guardian. Now, we would love if you'll be able to donate. You can continue to read for free, but we would love it if you can continue to donate. The Telegraph started with this idea that, okay, you can read 5 articles a month, which is already saying is probably reading too much on the Telegraph anyway. But let's say that you could read 5 articles a month. And then it ends up in a situation where, oh no, now you've only got 1 article that you can access. Like everything now on the Telegraph is paid. There's only a couple of articles that you can access. But the advertising is still there. Then you have websites like The Independent that says, oh, if you want, free-thinking journalism, pay us. If you don't, uninstall the ad blocker. So I'm thinking, am I going to get a different version of the article whether I have an ad blocker or not? If I'm paying or not? How does that actually compute? But many of us here saying, no, well, traditional media is a thing of the past because it's all about social media now. Social media is basically feeding the media. You normally get someone records a video and then there's thousands of newspapers saying, hey, can I use this? Can I use this? And normally there's one from the Daily Mail that says, can I use this? And then there's thousands of people saying, tell the Daily Mail to screw away, piss off. No, don't let them use it. And it's made all of us microjournalists, and it's given us everyone a voice. And guess what it's given us? Even more information overload. So now, it's not just the news on the TV. Now we've got the internet and all of this information and all of this social media. And this comes in different ways. It comes on Twitter. It comes on Facebook. It comes on Snapchat. It comes, well, let's hold a moment of silence for Google+. Google+, actually, my mother was on Google+, and she was the only one that called me and was angry why Google Plus is dying. I'm like, I don't know. You're the only person on it. But anyway, this has created our walled gardens. And they've created these walled gardens where we're curating the environment, right? We're following like-minded people. We block those that we generally don't agree with or mute them. And we are in our echo chamber. And we're following people that we generally agree with, people that think like us. And who is keeping this wonderful walled garden? Our keeper, right? And we train it because it creates the content that matters for us. It shows us the things that we care about first, and we're trusting the keeper. We're trusting the keeper to give us the information that they think is relevant to us. And not only do we trust the keeper, but we also help the keeper. We hit like. There was recently an article by one of the co-founders of Twitter, saying the like was one of the retweets of likes was one of the worst things that I did in my life. Yes, we hit the like. And the like is allowing us to say what we like. And guess what? It's training some algorithms in the background saying, give them more of this. We hit dislike. We hit anger. We have emojis for anger, frustration, crying, etc. If you look at blog posts, if you use something like discuss, they've got emojis to show all types of emotions. And we just click those emojis without actually having a care in the world on who's on the receiving end. And most of all, we hit share. So these algorithms that are essentially trying to engage us, that are focused on engaging people, that are focused on targeting people, we are training. And then, of course, there's the things that we don't know about, like, for example, the censorship. How many of you saw this article? This article came out a few years ago about some Norwegian newspaper realized that they had censored this picture of the Vietnam War because it was considered child pornography. Now, the only reason that this came out was because it was a famous publication in Norway. They made some stink, and Facebook apologized about it. But Facebook, for instance, has its own rules on how to do content moderation. Rules that is kept secret for a long time, but now is tried to publish in some places. So what is that rule book? For example, it says, remarks such as "someone shoot Trump" should be deleted because as a head of state, he is in a protected category. But it can be permissible to say, "to snap a bitch's neck." Videos of violent deaths, while marked as disturbing, do not always have to be deleted because they can help create awareness of issues such as mental illness. So there is someone there that's defined this rule book that is saying what we can and we cannot see. A private company. Now, of course, there's also the human side of censorship, right? Which is essentially the new sweatshops. You have people in certain countries that are getting paid very low wages, that are suffering from anxiety, from depression, and all they do is basically moderate the content that we post on Facebook. So people sit there all day and say, there was literally nothing enjoyable about my job. You'd go into work at 9 a.m. every morning, turn on your computer and watch someone have their head cut off. Every day, every minute, that's what you would see. Heads being cut off. So that we can enjoy baby pictures and cat pictures, someone is moderating all the evil that is being published on these platforms. But it also raises the question of, do I actually see everything? Some things that, yes, may be bad for me to see are being censored. But what about the things that may not be bad for me to see? Am I actually seeing them or not? But it doesn't matter. The good thing is that we get bite-sized information we can easily share. If you take a look at this tweet, now Mr. Frog is a friend of mine, okay? I've known Mr. Frog for a long time, and I followed Mr. Frog, and generally, you know, he's in my industry, so he knows a lot about microservices. And the other day, he tweeted and said, "This is definitive proof that the Earth is flat. This article is mind-blowing." Now, okay, here I'm guessing that most people realize that this is nonsense, right? There are places in the world who actually believe this. But let's look at the share flow that happens here. This person is someone I generally trust. I've skimmed the article. The message basically aligns with my thoughts. I'll share it and maybe read later in more detail. I'll just share. It doesn't matter if I've actually read the article or anything, because I trust Mr. Frog. What we generally don't do is say, well, let me ask if it's fake or not. Let me read the article and contrast and contrast it with opposing views. Let me see, for example, that entire video clip of the little segment that they've pushed out to kind of demonstrate their narrative. Should I look at the entire video? Let me put a voice to that snippet in the bigger context. These are things we don't do. We don't even often click on a tweet and say, let me look at the comments and the replies, and oh look, this tweet that I thought was true, someone is actually saying, no, this is false information. Here's an article proving that it's false information. Often we don't even do that. But you say, well, of course we don't, because we don't have time. There's so much information coming, we just basically share and forget. And the platforms make it so easy for us to do that. They provide us with little icons that we can easily click and not really have any effort. Just click, share, retweet. And we share about many topics, about companies and organizations, about individuals, and about, obviously, politics. And we started with like, oh, we'll show those nasty corporations. You know, someone's done something evil. We will show them. I don't know if any of you have seen this article of the 29 stages of a Twitter storm, where a company does something wrong, someone catches wind, it makes the rounds, a famous person makes a comment on it, the media notices it, company is forced to apologize, everyone forgets and moves on to tomorrow. Yes, all of this happens within 24 hours. Every day, in and out. Every constant day. And we do this, we share, and we forget. Which is great. We call out companies for bad behavior. We call out politicians for bad behavior. We call out individuals for bad behavior. Remember Justin Sacco, anyone? Nobody. Let me refresh your memory. This was a lady that was white, that was in Heathrow, that tweeted, I'm going to Africa, I'm going to South Africa, hope I don't catch AIDS. I'm just kidding, I'm white. Okay? Now, she's the only person that will know whether that was sarcasm, it wasn't, whatever. But from the time she took off to the time she landed in 8 hours, her whole life was destroyed. She was fired, she was persecuted, she was doxxed, she disappeared for 5 years. Now she's back actually working in the same media company. But for 4 or 5 years, she just completely went off the map, living on people's sofas. And, you know, we don't know whether actually it was sarcastic or not. But we all, with our shares, oh my God, how disgusting, blah, 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 we participated. But what about all the stories we don't follow up on? If you look at it, social media has basically made us judge, jury, and executioner. And all we have to do is retweet. If you've seen 1984, you know that clip of like 5 minutes of hate? That's essentially kind of like where we're leading, like 5 minutes of hate. But there are things that have a much broader impact, of course, and we all know about this. Like, for example, violence, right? Violence. There was a fake news that made the rounds on WhatsApp saying that a few people had raped some girl, I don't know what, and it doesn't matter what they had done because it was false. The men got lynched and killed because of fake information that was shared on WhatsApp, just making the rounds, right? Burned to death because of a rumor on WhatsApp. Well, we just shared. We didn't really think about contrasting. We didn't think about, hey, you know what? Maybe we should contrast and maybe we should say that this is actually wrong. And of course, bigger impacts, politics, Cambridge Analytica. So I was actually talking about Cambridge Analytica before Cambridge Analytica was even Cambridge Analytica. And it's just like, it's surprising that are we that naive as a society that we think that, let's think for a moment, if I can target people to sell them washing machines, why can't I target people to make them vote for a specific thing? Because there are no laws that say I cannot do political advertising. And we have platforms that say not only I will target you because you live in Spain, but I will target you based on your gender, on your race, on your interests, on all of this, which is something that you can access through the control panel with platforms such as Facebook. But I mean, that's even like out-of-the-box advertising. No, you've even got nicer things. You've got these things called dark posts. Dark posts are the best Facebook advertising approach right now. They don't show up on your feed or followers, right? They kind of avoid the content looking spammy, kind of like native advertising, so to speak. They allow precise micro-targeting, specific people based on age, gender, etc., and they allow for better A/B testing, right? Invented by Facebook, available on all platforms. And this was a really nice post, like encouraging people to say, use dark posts. I think the author didn't even get the irony of calling it dark posts, right? And this micro-targeting, of course, it allows to profiling voters based on social media and other data, and it creates tribes. And then it has that tribe spread the message, right? What do we call that? It's very famous. We call it word-of-mouth marketing. What is the best marketing that works? Word of mouth, right? Why do you use a certain IDE? Well, because my friend uses that IDE, and I trust my friend, Mr. Frog. Word-of-mouth marketing works. And just recently, Facebook said, because Twitter announced that they're going to ban political ads, Mark Zuckerberg said, well, we're going to continue to allow them, and it's okay if they're false as well. It's fine. It's okay. Because discourse and discussion. Yeah. He thinks that this is all about free expression. So can anything good come from all of this? Well, yes. I mean, I don't know. Did anybody follow this story here where this girl was going to be condemned or sent to prison in Saudi Arabia if she were to go back, and she went to Thailand and they managed to rescue her and get her out of the country and not go back to her parents. These are good things. Sure, good things can come out of this. Anyone remember the Arab Spring? Yeah? All the world, all Europe, everyone was backing the Arab Spring. What happened in Egypt? Oh, we've forgotten about that now. Anyone remember the green avatar for Iran? I do, because I was born in Iran, so I remember this. Everyone, all my friends, everyone I was following on Twitter was painting their avatar green with a green overlay. What were they doing? They were supporting the protesters in Iran. They were saying, go out and fight. Some of those protesters died. Many of them were incarcerated. 2 months later, we changed our avatar from green back to what it was, right? Neil Postman speaks about being passive observers. You know, with the television, we were passive observers. We would sit and we would, comment about how things are happening down at the pub or with our friends. What we have now become with social media is armchair participants, because we are participating in many of these things without actually having full context, full information, and full awareness of everything going on. And often, we just do it and then move on to the next thing. But you say, oh, forget politics. For me, social media and all of this is just about friends and family. Yes, sure. I just like to take selfies and food and pics of food, right? I don't want to do anything else that all of these things that you're talking about. I just browse through my friends' timelines and see what they're up to. That's all I do. It helps me stay connected with friends and families. I quit Facebook. I quit everything that was related to Facebook. I quit WhatsApp, Instagram. I quit WhatsApp. WhatsApp is very common in Spain. My family says, how are we going to talk to you? I said, pick up the phone, right? Pick up the phone. Eventually, they moved to a different platform that I use. But, I had 1,450 friends on Facebook. Friends. And we don't think about the psychological impacts that these things have, right? We come down to, for example, scroll and refresh attitude. I mean, I sit on the plane. I travel a lot. I'm on the plane a lot, right? And I observe the behavior of people. They're with their phones, and it's just the sequence of click on an icon, refresh, go back home, click on another icon, refresh, go back home, click on another icon, refresh. I do this myself. It's horrible. It's bad. But this is where we're going, just constant refresh of information. How many likes did I get? I posted something. Why don't people like it? What did I do? Did I say something wrong? Was that picture, was that selfie of me not nice? Why aren't people retweeting this tweet that I tweeted? I mean, what is it? What's wrong with it? Oh, look at the wonderful life that everyone else is having. I mean, Facebook drives people to this, right? People generally that are on Facebook never put pictures of their real household, like not the messy, crappy things. They only put the beautiful pictures. As Dan North really once said brilliantly when Facebook purchased WhatsApp, he said that Facebook shows the life you want others to think you have, whereas WhatsApp is really showing the life you really have because you're with a smaller group of friends and you really share the information. And there's multiple studies of depression in girls linked to high usage of social media. Facebook addiction linked to stalking your self-worth and on social acceptance. All of these things that for us, maybe it's not that we can handle it, but there are children as old as 10, 9, 11, 12 on social media, on Instagram, worrying about the likes and the retweets. And it's not just about social media. We are sharing so much data. It's not just about media and social media. There's so much data. You want to do push-ups, there's an app for it. You want to run, there's an app for it. You want to work out, eat, drink wine, sleep, work, read, watch, travel. There's an app for it. Anything you want, there's an app for it. And there's assistants. You can call it Alexa, Google, Siri, Cortana, Bixby. Bixby is that thing when you press that annoying button on the Samsung that it keeps appearing and like go away. That's Bixby. Call it AI. And you're like, well, big deal. So I get some targeted ads, and I don't, and I'm really, really well thought out person, and I'm not influenced by politics, so I get some targeted ads. Bruce Schneier says, surveillance is the business model of the internet. We build systems that spy on people in exchange for services. Corporations call it marketing. They're like, my data is meaningless, and I get it for free. In fact, we've taken it one step further. There's a cafe in Massachusetts, I think, that basically says, students can come in, drink free lattes in exchange for their data. Like, we've taken this concept to the physical world as well. The Amazon Go. I don't care what I shop. I don't care if people know what I'm buying or not buying. Amazon reportedly employs thousands of people to listen to your Alexa conversations. Okay, great. But don't worry, if you're using Apple, they're also listening. And if you're using Google, they're also listening. And if anyone still uses Skype, well, they're listening to that as well. And of course you say, but why? Well, Mirko, who does a nice VPN software, said if Google would start charging money for Google search, how much would you be willing to pay a month? I should get it for free. Screw you. Why should I pay for this? Now, you all famously believe that if you're not paying for it, you're not the customer, you're the product being sold, right? We've heard that. I've traced that down to a guy called Andrew Lewis, Blue Beetle on Metafilter. Apparently was the first person that kind of said it in this shape. Well, if it no longer matters whether you pay for the product or not, in the era of big data, you are still the product. That's me. I quote myself on my own slides. Because data is now more valuable than oil. And it's getting worse. Internet of Things. Okay? So LG threatens to put Wi-Fi in every appliance it introduces in 2017. The headline of that, it threatens. It did. It threatened to do it, and it did. LG smart appliances now work with both Amazon Alexa and the Google Assistant. How to turn off smart TV snooping features. You know, it's reached a point where I want to have a conversation with my wife at home, and I don't say, let's talk later because the kids are here. I say, let's go out to the garden because the TV is here. Because I haven't configured my Samsung TV to stop snooping on me. And we talk about Internet of Things because we are just connecting absolutely everything. But what about the Internet of People? And the Internet of People, I don't mean what some people have done in Sweden, which is basically insert a microchip into their skin so that they can, instead of taking their phone out and tapping to pay, they can just like high-five a little disc on the table, which is great, it's fantastic. I guess if you go like this, that would do a like. But it's about us. We have become the Internet of Things. We have become the Internet of Data. It's us that is generating all of this information. And we've essentially sacrificed our privacy for convenience. We've said, oh, it's just so convenient. It's so convenient that I do all of this because it just helps me throughout my day. But questions we don't usually ask is, do they store my data? Do they send it anywhere? How can they use it? Is it safe? Terms of what? I mean, every time I look at my phone, there's like 30 apps being upgraded. And every time they upgrade, they could change their terms of service. Londoners give up eldest children in public Wi-Fi security horror show. Yes, this Mirko guy set up this experiment in London where he said, I will give you free Wi-Fi. In exchange, you will give me your firstborn. A few people accepted it before someone noticed it, because no one reads the terms of service. Being at home DNA testing companies sharing genetic data with third parties. AI could reinvent medicine or become a patient's nightmare. Yes, because, well, we've all heard the stories about how certain companies are sharing data with certain other companies about healthcare. Just recently, there was one in the news without even your consent. Roomba has been busy mapping our homes, and now the data could be shared. It's fantastic, right? Sex lives of app users shared with Facebook without their consent. The other day, I bought a really disgusting beer from Spain, Malaga. I told you we sometimes do. Yeah, no mind. Actually, we've got some nice microbreweries now in Malaga. And it was really, really horrible. And I'm like, what do other people think about this? So I'm on an application called Untapped. Anyone heard of it? Yes? You go and check in and demonstrate to people how much you drink. The other day, I checked in something at 10:30, and someone's like, a little bit early, aren't we, Hadi? Thank you. And I'm like Googling the beer, and this shows up. This shows up, and I'm like, wait, how did this happen? My profile is private. Oh no, sorry, default option is that the profile is public. Right? Thousands of Google calendars possibly leaked because private information online because default is public. Do we take the time to configure these? I tried the other day. I went to the LinkedIn, and it says, Hadi, you're the boss of your account. I'm like, finally, I'm the boss of something. And I said, OK, let me try and configure this. So I clicked on privacy, and I saw how others see your profile and network information, how others see your LinkedIn activity. This is just the privacy tab. How LinkedIn uses your data, job-seeking preferences, blocking, and hiding. And then I clicked on ads. I didn't even bother clicking on communications. Now, who spends time to configure all of this? But yet, companies say, we're completely transparent with our settings. No shit. And when it's not optional and you're not told, Facebook says it needs always to know your location and is warning iOS users and Android users against turning it off. Boss headphones spies on listeners. Lawsuit. Vibrator makes to pay millions over claims it secretly tracked usage. AccuWeather caught sending user location to data even when location sharing is off. 500 Android apps on the Google Play Store found spying. This just happened recently to me with the Cam Scanner. Cam Scanner is an app I've been using to scan my... Apparently, they were sending my stuff somewhere. Oh, I had to switch. Uber, iOS app had secret permission that allowed it to copy your phone. I mean, these are daily headlines. The great thing about this talk is that, I'm kind of lazy, so I don't update these. Some of these are from this is from 2017, but these come daily. I'm just too tired of constantly making screenshots. I could just open the internet and do this talk with the internet. Runkeeper is secretly tracking you around the clock and sending your data to advertisers. AT&T hit with a lawsuit over sale of customers' location data. And this isn't even your phone sharing location data. This is their network sharing location data. And some person with $300 found where someone was living, and they didn't even have location data, found their phone. And then, of course, there's the software issues. As I said, the Cam Scanner. Twitter warns that private tweets were public for years. Facebook bug switched millions of privacy settings to public. Bug. Major iPhone FaceTime bug lets you hear the audio of the person you are calling. I say bug because as the saying kind of goes, one person's bug is a PR's good day, right? Because those that have to deal with this PR backlash, they'll just say, oh, it was a bug. It's fine. And of course, what if someone else accesses it, like Doxogram, major breach found in biometric system used by banks, UK police, and defense firms. This is not even like your average supermarket shop. This is systems that are used by banks, UK police, and defense firms. Oh, yeah, we forgot to encrypt the data. Fortunately, again, we have laws like GDPR that if something bad happens, we will get compensated. Do you remember Equifax? Yes, I think everyone got like $12 out of it for all of their credit ratings being made public. And of course, what happens if other people use the data against you? There's a very interesting article of how one woman's digital life was weaponized against her. I recommend that you read it. By the way, everything I put, there's links at the bottom. But I thought, okay, what information is there? So I came across this website called Family Tree Now. And this was kind of like, people putting your name, and this is very big in the US, like people want to see where they kind of come from. And it's like, I will find all of my family tree, which is great. That's fantastic. And then it had a sister website, which was called True People Search. And I put in my colleague's name, and it found all of the information about that person. But recently, I came across something even better. Okay, this is really cool. It's called mylife.com. And it says, reputation is everything. See and improve your public reputation score or check on anyone else's. I said, okay, I'm going to look up one of my colleagues with his permission. So I typed in his name, and I've blanked this out everywhere, so hopefully you don't see anything. It says, locating full reputation and background details for blah, blah, blah. Locating hidden social profiles and photos for blah, blah, blah. Preparing the reputation profile, local and federal court records, public web, social media and internet profiles. Attention, it may contain content, graphic content, and sensitive details. Click to continue. Oh, yes. We search every corner. We're preparing the reports for you. Verifying personal information and contact details. It provides basic information. You can also find age, date of birth, contact information, etc., etc. Verifying address and location. If available, satellite pictures of their current residence and demographic data are provided. The relatives and associate sections of their profiles provide possible family members, we're providing that as well. Verifying licenses and permits, verifying lawsuits, liens, and bankruptcies, verifying sex offender status, verifying arrest and criminal records, finishing up the reputation profile on. Okay, and now comes the best part. I will not use this information to stalk anyone. If I see someone I know, I will not publicize their information. I will not use it to harass people. And I won't really use this to evaluate someone, really. But hey, that's what exactly you're telling me to do. Pay up. Okay, here's your report. Now pay up. $4 is kind of good, right? If you think about it. All of that information with one click on the website. And the best part of it is without your consent. So if you're on there, they didn't get your consent. Why? It's public records. Sure it is, but did anyone say make a website and put it all online and make it accessible to everyone? Back in the old days, you needed to find some information from someone. We used to have these big things called the phone book, right? And then you had to go to an office, to the public records to find some information. Now it's just a click away. You're like, okay, again, big deal, I have nothing to hide. Now, fan or not of Edward Snowden, one thing that he did say is that arguing that you don't care about the right to privacy because you have nothing to hide is no different than saying you don't care about free speech because you have nothing to say. But you're like, well, it's not as if we're living in an Orwellian society. Now, let's recap for those that aren't familiar with Orwell. 1984, George Orwell talked about censorship, talked about control, talked about Big Brother. But that didn't happen, fortunately. Remember PRISM? Yes. You don't need to even have private access anymore. Like this whole spying on you. Like if someone had told you 5 years ago, hell, a year ago, no, even a month ago, hey, can I put a microphone and camera in your house? What would you say? No. And yet we have it. And Facebook has just come out with Facebook Portal. But we've all got microphones in our houses, right? On our phones or on our assistants everywhere. Extreme digital vetting of visitors to the US. Yeah. Now when you go, if you ever fill out the ESTA visa, they ask you for your GitHub. They ask you for your GitHub account, for your Twitter, for your Facebook. And if you don't have Facebook, you're in trouble. You're like, nah, you're lying. You have Facebook. I'm like, no, really, I don't. No, you have. Where's your Facebook account? But hey, doesn't matter. If you've ever been to China, they've already put this in function. Like this isn't just made up nonsense. China actually has ranking citizens with social credit. And if you do not score good enough social credit, you become marginalized. You can't buy train tickets, you can't buy plane tickets, etc. This lady, which says, I'm on the Tianjin to Beijing train, and the automated announcement just warned us that breaking train rules will hurt our personal credit scores. It's absolutely true. I was also on that train, and I heard the exact same thing. Right? In Venezuela, ZTE is helping build what they call the Fatherland card to give people kind of like, help with groceries and that. In exchange, they kind of track everything and everywhere you're going. A friend of mine, a colleague of mine works in Singapore. And one day when I was in Singapore, he had this wristband. And I'm like, is that a Fitbit? He's like, no, this is given to me by the Singaporean government. I said, what is it? He's like, well, if I do exercise, it gives me credits for groceries. Oh, man, that's convenient, isn't it? Fortunately, now the Singaporean government has made a deal with Fitbit, so now they're just using Fitbit. And legislation is slowly creeping in. China bans minors from playing video games after 10. To be honest, I got 3 kids. This might not be such a bad idea, because at 3 in the morning shouting about Fortnite starts to get annoying, right? UK minister, the UK has so many problems that trying to log into encryption right now is the least of them. Australians set to become guinea pigs for worldwide war on privacy, which happened. Australia is really kind of like really innovative in this area. Australia proposes to face scans for watching online pornography. Right? So that kids don't watch online pornography, we're going to do facial recognition. Dutch House of Representatives passes dragnet surveillance bill. Coming back to Spain, remember how I said we take a bad idea and we do it really badly? We passed a law that says, we can in fact use your social media likes and dislikes to target you even more with political campaigns. Reports of freedom of the internet are saying that every day it's becoming worse and worse. And companies are caving in, See, depending on the company where you're going, will abide by your rules. Bing is in China. Netflix is in Saudi Arabia. Oh, you didn't like this specific comedy show that insulted someone in the royal family or whatever? Don't worry, we'll just censor it in Saudi Arabia. It's okay. Apple is in China, and there's a law in China that everything of any Chinese user has to stay in China. And these laws are basically everywhere. So how are we doing in this setup of Aldous Huxley or George Orwell or News Postman? So let's think about it. Censorship, we got it. Control, we got it. Big Brother, we got it. Information is entertainment, we got it. Relevance is lost in irrelevance, we got it. Psychological manipulation, we have. And shallow forms of information. So we're doing pretty good, right? So welcome, my son. Welcome to the machine. Where have you been? It's all right. We know where you've been. This is the opening lyrics of Welcome to the Machine by Roger Waters. In it, he was referring to the record industry and how the record industry is abusive and only looking for their own benefits, to the point that even in the lyrics it says, by the way, which one's Pink, thinking that there's someone in the group called Pink. And it says, welcome to the machine. Welcome, my son. Welcome to the machine. What did you dream? It's all right. We told you what to dream. And if you think about what we are now with data, this is kind of accurate describing internet and data for us right now. They know where we've been, and they'll know what we dream. And of course, where there's data, there's AI. We have got the facial recognition, and again, there was a really good thing in China on the BBC where there was a reporter that went to China and said, okay, I'm going to show my picture to the police officers. Let's see how long it takes for you to track me. There are so many surveillance cameras in China, so many that it took them 7 minutes to find that person. 7 minutes through facial recognition. Remember I told you about the billboards target everyone? No, you can manipulate that as well. The new billboards that they've installed in Piccadilly Circus is with taking into account for the future that you can actually target people based on facial recognition who is in the square at that time. If there's a lot of teenagers, target advertising for teenagers. If it's raining, target advertising to make you feel nice and cozy at home. And then, of course, AI has given way to fake video generators. It's given fake to deep fakes, which Mark Zuckerberg's like, it's okay. We'll allow deep fakes as well. You've got voice imitation, but most of all, it has its own issues, of course. And it's called the bias, the issue of bias. And Google categorizes this into 3 categories. You have selection bias, which is the data that is used to train the algorithm is biased to begin with. There are a lot of people that say, oh, all of the problems that we have in the world we'll solve with AI. And you're like, okay, how does AI work? We train it with what? With data. Where does the data come from? Oh. So you mean that the 60 or 70 years of data that we have is biased? Yes, there you go. Interaction bias. Bias is the algorithm in the way the user interacts with it. And latent bias. The algorithm incorrectly correlates data with gender, race, and income. And this latent bias isn't even something that is only in AI. It's actually existed for some time, and I'll get to it. But here's an example of machine bias, right? They gave these 2 pictures, and they said which one was a criminal. Guess which one the machine said? The gentleman on the left. Guess which one it was? The gentleman on the right. They've just recently realized that racial bias in medical algorithms favor white patients over sicker black patients. I'm all aware that you've seen this just from recently, right? The Apple Card turns out that it's sexist because it's giving David's wife much less of a score than David himself. And they've got joint bank accounts, everything. That's kicked off an investigation. If you remember Tay, do you remember Tay? This was a bot Microsoft brought out to kind of interact with people. This is the result of it. Within like a couple of hours, it was calling everyone a Nazi and everyone a bitch and everyone an asshole. Interaction bias for you at play. Probably with data bias as well. Amazon scrapped secret AI recruiting tool that showed bias against women. And as I said, this dates back to even before machine learning. There's a very good book which I recommend you read, which is called Weapons of Math Destruction. And in it, Cathy O'Neill talks about the biases that were at play with algorithms, even, for example, dating back to how the police would align criminality with race, but it wasn't with race, it was more around poverty, it was more around postcodes. And this starts to become, not a chicken and egg, but it becomes a vicious cycle because it reinforces those ideas constantly. And she talks about that there is no accountability for data. that these algorithms they're created by private companies used by public organizations. And it comes from historical data with historical practices. Yes, we're all racist. The society as a whole has been very racist, and it continues to be racist, maybe a little less, but there was a hell of a lot of racism in the past. Data points that were meant to be objective were not, because it was a lying causality with correlation. And all of this drives to increased inequality. Increased inequality in terms of jobs, in terms of assessments, in terms of crime, in terms of everything. So those that are marginalized are the ones that are going to be suffering the most when we put all of this in play. So in summary, and remember that I told you that this talk is not inspirational, but I'll try and inspire you with the next slide. We're kind of screwed. Someone told me when I gave this talk recently, they're like, I didn't like it because you didn't tell us how we've got to fix the problem. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. We just duck our head in the sand. That will work. Now, the bad news is that this isn't an episode of Black Mirror. In fact, I only found out about Black Mirror after I was giving some talks around this. Someone's like, oh, have you seen Black Mirror? I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Now, the good news is that, well, there isn't really much in terms of good news anyway. So thank you very much. No. What if, no, don't clap just yet. I'm going to try and be a little bit uplifting. I'm joking. What, if anything, can be done? Okay, so we can put in regulations. Sure, nobody likes regulations. India's Supreme Court rules privacy a fundamental right in a landmark case. Is that the right direction? Maybe. Is this the right direction? Very bad implementation if it was. Okay, this is a good idea, very badly implemented. But we need to take into account things like accountability of code. Have data checks, as pointed out by Cathy O'Neill. Have objectivity and transparency on these algorithms. Try to make use of ethics in technology. And this isn't just about going and doing a course on ethics. This is about our own principles, our own ethics, our own morality. As companies, yes, YouTube is changing its algorithm to stop recommending conspiracies. Now remember, all of these platforms are about engaging. How do you engage? You engage by showing controversial topics. YouTube is trying to move away from that. Fact checks are being introduced by Google so that you can check for things. Twitter will ban all political advertising. Facebook's like, no, we'll continue, and if it's fake, it doesn't matter. It's okay. But what about us as individuals? Because if you look at us as individuals, if you take a look at data, we're consumers, but we're also producers. So as consumers, what can we do? First and foremost, we can stop blaming technology. Technology, yes, has its fault. The internet, yes. Social media platforms, yes. They have all taken Neil Postman's nightmare and made it worse. But if we just say, oh, it's technology, we also fall into a mindset of, oh, well, we just sit back and wait for technology to fix it. And it's not all about technology. You see headlines of Microsoft president, democracy is at stake. Democracy works until it doesn't. Social media is an existential threat to democracy. Sure, but if today it's not social media, tomorrow it'll be something else. So we need to think about what we're doing. We need to understand that not everything that we agree with is real. In fact, there's a lot of fake things on the internet. Fake reviews. Did you ever see the review about the best restaurant in London, which was a garden shed? It made it to the top of TripAdvisor. It was a garden shed. People booking reservations. Fake comments, fake businesses, fake politics, and fake news. In fact, it turns out that much of the internet is fake. But at the same time, not everything that we disagree with is bot or fake news. Because now we end up with this tendency of, oh, well, I don't really agree with this, it must be fake news. Oh, I do agree with this, oh, it must be real. We need to start to contrast the information we read. We need to understand that just like the media, the news outlets have narratives at play, everything has a narrative at play. And most of all, we need to be aware of our own confirmation bias. Not just randomly share things because it kind of aligns with our thoughts. We need to break out of our own bubbles. In fact, there's a good paper that was talking about reducing controversy by connecting opposing views. That doesn't mean calling each other assholes on the internet, by the way. Twitter recommends this. It's like, follow these two people. These are probably as opposing as you could potentially get. You need to check and contrast talks from this link. Every time I try and make sure things are up to date and they're not kind of like outdated or wrong or fake, but please call me out if it's wrong. But that's as consumers. What about as producers? Because we are continuously producing data as well. We need to evaluate before we hand over our data. We need to analyze before we just blindly share things. We need to think of the impact and the consequences that something has before we just click retweet, before we hit like, before we do a share on whatever platform we are. We need to evaluate the consequences that these things have. Or, to summarize, we need to think first before just sharing. In fact, another article was pointing out that in the wake of a terror attack, maybe not share so much, because if one of the purposes of terrorism is to incite terror, and we're just sharing left and right pictures and everything that's happening, it is doing more to encourage that, as opposed to less. Maybe, if there's a spectrum of naive and cynical, I'm probably about here, but it's okay to be a little bit more cynical. When we see this really cool game that says, oh, post your picture now and post your picture 10 years later, maybe think, do I really want to train more algorithms to do that? And as technologists, because we're mostly technologists here, first and foremost, educate the less tech savvy. Explain to them the dangers of technology. I've explained it to my parents, I've explained it to my children, I've explained it to my siblings, to people that aren't so tech savvy. Explain to them the problems that technology has. As software developers, as creators, we need to drive towards more sustainable business models, right? This is an article about a selfish love letter to venture capitalists. How everything is VC-backed. It's okay. Oh, Uber, it's cheap. Oh, this, it's cheap. Oh, that, it's cheap. Why? Because someone is subsidizing it. Yes, they're called VCs. At one point, they're going to want to cash back. What do they have to cash back on? Well, right now, it basically looks just like data. For example, the New York Times said after they cut GDPR, their revenue kept growing. So great. Go in this direction. Don't focus exclusively your business model of free and let's sell people's data, or free and let's make it less expensive, but we sell people's data, right? No, don't do what this guy does. Create interfaces that favor privacy first. So think about privacy and make it easy for people to configure their options. Don't do things LinkedIn does. Move away from dark UI patterns. Facebook knowingly duped game-playing kids and their parents out of money. Don't do that. Do this. A little device that you can put on your assistant that basically filters, OK Google or OK whatever, and if it says that, it lets it go through. If not, it discards it. Think about how we can improve with things like this. Account and work for diversity. This is critical because we are diverse people, all backgrounds, all races, all genders. And if we do not take this into account, we're going to end up marginalizing those that are less favored than us, those that are already having a hard time. It is really critical to take this into account. And, we code the future together. Think of the consequences of your creations. Think of what you are creating. You've all seen Jurassic Park. You remember that scene where it says, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. We should stop to think if we actually should do something. So to summarize, really, whatever this machine may be, right now all we know is that it comes with a hell of a lot of data. A lot of data in all shapes and forms. We are feeding it data and we are consuming data from everywhere. So the question is, can we be more than just a cog in a wheel of that machine? And if we can we try and alter it for the better? Thank you.